Welcome to Tucker Carlson. Today, we have spent the last 6 months looking very closely at what exactly happened on January 6th, 2021, and in the aftermath. The result is a 3-part documentary series for our Tucker Carlson Originals called Patriot Purge, which launches this week. As part of that documentary, and going all this week, we want to speak to people who are caught up in this new domestic war on terror being waged on American citizens by the United States government as controlled by Joe Biden. We spoke earlier this month to a retired Navy lieutenant commander called Thomas Caldwell, who's one of the people who was caught up in the dragnet. Here's part of our interview with him on the 8 p.m. show. Watch.
They made me the poster boy. I was defendant number one in a conspiracy. They said I conspired, and I actually put together a military-style attack on the Capitol, that I stormed into the Capitol and did all these terrible things. They even claimed I threatened our lawfully elected representatives in Congress. Total claptrap. But they sent that information all around the world, across all the media platforms. Interestingly enough, while I was languishing in the prison in solitary confinement, not knowing when I was going to get out.
He is out. That was retired Lieutenant Commander Thomas Caldwell. His wife, Sharon Caldwell, both join us now. Thank you both for coming on, Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell. So let's begin. This is a remarkable story that I think all Americans should hear because it has implications for every one of us. I want to start on the day that federal agents came to your house without warning, totally unexpectedly. If you would describe in whatever order you like, what happened that day?
Well, Tucker, it was a pretty horrible day. Before dawn, I was awakened, as was Sharon, by an FBI SWAT team that met us at our front door. They had an armored vehicle with a battering ram right up against the side of the house. There were lights in my face as I came out my front door, people screaming at me, a couple of dozen military-clad individuals, helmets, body armor, automatic assault rifles, and so on, screaming at me. They grabbed me, dragged me across the front yard, and threw me down on the hood of one of their vehicles. Then they proceeded to try to truss me up, put me in handcuffs, attach that to a waist chain. The wind is blowing, it's cold, and I really had no idea what the heck is going on. And I turned and I looked back to the front door, and my wife Sharon was there, dressed only in her nightshirt, barefoot, the whole bit, hands up, in the glare of the lights, and they were screaming at her, screaming at her. You really couldn't tell what they were saying. And I looked, and I saw the little red dots of the laser pointers of their rifles playing across her face and her chest. And I'm on this vehicle, and I'm saying, God, please don't let them kill my wife. Please.
That's horrifying. Sharon Caldwell, what did you think?
Well, I didn't know what to think. We were both asleep. It was dark. It was cold. It was January. And he was fast asleep. I mean, really in a deep sleep. And I heard this bullhorn yelling, Thomas Caldwell, come on out. Thomas Caldwell, FBI, come out. And so I'm desperately trying to wake him up, and he wouldn't wake up. And he finally did. I finally got him awake. I said, honey, the FBI is at the door. I'm not kidding. And he finally got out there. And then after he was out there, a short period of time after that, they said, Sharon Caldwell, come on. They were blaring this bullhorn, and so I go out there, and they take me to an SUV, which I have to say, I mean, this whole thing is just so unreal, but I have to say, at least for me, they treated me fairly nicely when they were here, with professional respect and courtesy. I was in a warm car waiting. I don't know how long I had to sit in that car. I guess I don't know what they were doing with Tom. We were, of course, separated, and so I'm sitting in this car with the heat on, and it was comfortable temperature-wise, but I sat there for quite a while. I don't know how long, and I guess they were searching the house and the property, making sure it was okay for them to go in or whatever. So finally, I get to go back in, and I'm basically, for me, just mostly sat around in the living room for about 4.5 hours, and as they ransacked our house. But it was just completely unreal, and I to this day don't understand why they just couldn't have, contacted us or contacted Tom and said, hey, can you tell us, what happened that day? Just talk to him. I just felt like there were all these people here, the SWAT team. I felt like it was just a lot of overkill, but it was. Did
they go through your possessions in your home?
Oh yeah.
Oh, they absolutely did, and it's the little things that bother you, Tucker. I mean, besides the fact that they're throwing things around and they don't have any respect for any of your possessions, but they took things like they took all of our family photos. They scooped up my computer, and I mean the final photos of the last birthday of my deceased parents. I mean, photos of anniversaries and weddings and favorite pets and all that. That's all gone. They took all the media and flash drives and things like that they could get their hands on. We still haven't had those returned. I don't know if we'll ever get them back. And it's just that kind of overreach, disrespect. It just drives me crazy. We have a classic car, a 63 Thunderbird. I have that and maintain that in honor of my grandfather, who was actually a hero in the First World War and did 30 years on active duty, retired as a bird colonel in the United States Army. And I remember as a child, he used to give me 25 cents. It shows you how long ago it was. 25 cents to wash the wide white sidewall tires on his T-Bird. And he taught me many things on those wonderful days when I spent with my grandfather doing that kind of stuff. And he taught me about the love for my country, and he told me about our American heroes. And I always like to maintain that vehicle that we have now in remembrance of him. And they trash that vehicle to a degree. And that's very hard for me as a Christian to understand. We do our best to forgive people that have done things that are bad to us, but it's those kinds of things that just make you kind of grind your teeth, Tucker.
Well, it's beyond belief, especially since you served this country in the military for your career. Just to set the scene here a little bit, has either one of you ever been convicted of a violent crime? Are you a known threat to your community?
Of course not.
Okay. So there was no reason, there's nothing that we don't know that would have led the authorities to believe that there was going to be some sort of armed standoff, that they couldn't just call you on the phone rather than show up with a battering ram and point rifles at your wife's head?
Not at all. I've never even had a speeding ticket. And yet, this is what they did. Interestingly enough, when I was kind of flashing forward here, I'll share this with you. When I was in prison, I figured, well, we're going to straighten this all out. I'll get bonded out and so on. The U.S. attorney basically fibbed. I would normally use a stronger word than that. But he fibbed to the magistrate and told him I was a fugitive from justice, that there was a bench warrant issued for me in Washington, D.C. Now, it was untrue. He either knew it was untrue or should have known it was untrue.
What's the name of that U.S. Excuse me. What's the name of that U.S. attorney who did that?
I think I'd like to tell you about that offline. Okay. If that would be all right.
Well, I hope he's punished for it, because that's, I mean, for a prosecutor to lie is a crime, but it's also a grave sin against our system, I would say. So tell us what happened.
Yes,
so
sir.
you get carted away from your own home by this paramilitary squad, which trashes your house and your car. When do you find out what the charges are, and what happens to you next?
Well, let me say this, Tucker, before we talk about them dragging me out of here. I think you might find it interesting to know that I voluntarily gave a 2-hour interview to the FBI right here before they carted me off. People say, well, you don't talk to the police without a lawyer, but I didn't have anything to hide, so I didn't think there would be a problem with that. Early on, it was clear that the FBI agents, and then there were 2 special agents, didn't know anything about me. This is a rush to judgment, of course, but I'll give you an example. Part of the charges against me was I was the commander of a group they call a militia called the Oath Keepers. Now, you know, Tucker, and many people who are going to watch this show and who follow you all the time, understand that veterans refer to other veterans by the rank they held on active duty. I, for example, was on active duty continuously for almost 20 years and left the United States Naval Service as a lieutenant commander. And so people call me commander all the time. Well, unbeknownst to me, prior to them coming to our house, the FBI had found a private communication between two people, very casual, somewhere on social media, where someone referred to me as Commander Tom. Within mere hours of getting that information, the FBI had a judge, a federal judge, sign an arrest warrant for me and basically called me the commander of the Oath Keepers, and they said I was the one responsible for January 6th. Tucker, you remember a guy named Richard Jewell, right?
Very
Richard
well.
Jewell was the guy who was actually a hero in the 1996 Olympic bombing in Atlanta, Georgia. And yet, the media and law enforcement just dragged this guy through the mud. They said he was responsible. They said all these terrible things about him. And this went on for months and months and months. Well, what happened was, like me, he's absolutely innocent. So he had to go through all that stuff. Tucker, I will tell you, I am the Richard Jewell of January 6th.
But as far as I know, just correct me if I'm wrong, it is not a crime to belong to the Oath Keepers or any other organization in this country, no matter what Joe Biden thinks of it. Is that still true? I mean, you're allowed to belong to any volunteer organization you want, right?
I would think that that was true. Now, I was not a member of that organization, but I've met a couple of members. They seem very nice. I don't know that they've ever done anything violent.
Yeah, well, okay. So it's also bewildering to think this is happening in the United States. So you give this interview to the FBI. You think it's no problem speaking without a lawyer because I've done nothing wrong, even though you have heard in the back of your mind, never talk to the FBI without a lawyer. But you think I'm so innocent, it can't possibly harm me. And then they say you're going to jail?
Right. Well, there was a little bit more to that. They actually went through all of these weird ideas that they had about me, and I was very polite. I answered truthfully every question. Here's one you'll appreciate. Not only did they not know that I'd been a commander in the United States Navy, a lieutenant commander, but they didn't know that I had once worked for the FBI. Now, I wasn't a special agent or anything like that. I was an analyst, so kind of a glorified paper pusher, but I did work for them for a while. They never did any check to even find that, so no professional courtesy there. Something else that's interesting, they had a lot of pictures that I actually took with my phone on January 6th. And one of the special agents plopped it down in front of me, this one particular picture, and said, "Look, this is a picture of you inside the Capitol." And I looked at it and I said, "No, actually, that is a plywood tunnel that they build underneath scaffolding. Anybody that's been in a large city knows that that's what they do, so somebody way up high doesn't drop something on your noggin." So there was a picture that I had taken, and I said, "Look, here's plywood, a seam." And he looked at it, and Tucker, this is an interrogation that's on videotape. So when I watched it, I saw the special agent looking at what I was showing, and you could actually hear him say, "Oh." And this whole thing would be laughable if they hadn't done all the things that they've done to us, including carting me off and dropping me in prison in solitary confinement.
So on what basis did they do that? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sharon, please.
Yeah, I was just going to say, actually, that's kind of what I was going to say. So when they raided our home and Tom voluntarily gave this interview, as Tom already said, it was clear they really didn't know anything about him. I don't blame them for that. I don't fault them for that because they were the FBI was under intense political pressure to arrest as many people as possible prior to the inauguration of President Biden. They just were rushing. We have to arrest all these people to frighten people, to scare people away from coming to the inauguration. And I think even Michael Sherwin, who was the acting U.S. attorney, I believe, for the District of Columbia at that time, said that on a 60 Minutes show. He said, "Look, we just wanted to quickly arrest people so that they'd be afraid from going into D.C. for the inauguration." And Tom was arrested on January 19th. The inauguration was on the 20th. He was caught up in this rush. So to arrest people. So I don't really fault the FBI that they didn't know anything about him when they came here, because they did not have time to do an investigation. I mean, my understanding from talking to our wonderful defense attorney is that typically the FBI takes years to do an investigation. They take years and years and years before they arrest people and indict people, but they did not do that this time. So Tom was caught up in this rush. So I don't fault the individuals that were out here. They were doing their jobs, but the bottom line is here's the thing. What I found out later from court documents after Tom had been arrested was that they based their decision to arrest Tom at that time almost exclusively on private Facebook Messenger messages and some text messages that he sent or received, that he sent to a handful of friends and acquaintances. Now, it's clear now that when the FBI read some of these messages that they made some incorrect assumptions. For example, the whole commander thing. They incorrectly assumed he was commander of the Oath Keepers. He wasn't. He's lieutenant commander. That was an incorrect assumption. The other things that they read from these, they're reading these things cold, on a cold computer screen or a cold piece of paper. They don't know him. They obviously didn't know him. They don't know his personality. They don't know anything about him, really. But they're reading these things, and they're misinterpreting some of them. They're misconstruing them. They're misrepresenting them in court filings as well as to the media, back in January. So back in January, they used this as the basis to arrest him. And so back then, he was a member of the Oath Keepers, a leader of the Oath Keepers. That was in the initial charging document. He was a leader of the Oath Keepers. He was a commander of the Oath Keepers. And again, nothing against the Oath Keepers. Tom knows a couple of them. I have met a few. I think they're lovely people. Lovely people. Everybody that I met that's a part of that organization is a lovely person. I have nothing bad to say about him. But they claimed at that time that he planned the attack on the Capitol. They claimed he went inside the Capitol, that he caused destruction, destroyed property, all these things that since then, they said, oh, yeah, we were wrong. You didn't do this. You didn't do this. You're not a member. You're not a leader.
May I ask you to pause for a second?
So they've made... Yes, I'm sorry.
So just to be clear, it sounds like a lot of these lies wound up in the media because the Department of Justice leaked them.
Yes.
And that's relevant because our sleazy little Attorney General, Merrick Garland, just the other day asked a direct question by a member of Congress about someone who was at the scene on January 6th, said, we do not comment. It is a violation of the rule of law to comment on an ongoing investigation. But it sounds like they leaked an awful lot about the ongoing investigation into your husband. Is that correct?
I don't know if it was leaked or not. I have no idea. I do know that a lot of these statements were in court filings. So I'm assuming that, the media could have gotten a hold of the court filings and just ran with it. I don't know. I really don't know.
You know what, if I could jump in, one of the interesting things, though, Tucker, is while I'm in the living room, chained up, and they're getting ready to transport me, the phone rings. We have an answer machine. Obviously, we were pretty distressed, so we're not going to answer the phone. It was the Washington Post. And they said, hey, yeah, we just want comment on you being arrested, et cetera, et cetera. And I looked at her, and she looked at me, and I'm going, I wonder how long they had that in their back pocket so that they have an exclusive or something. I don't know. But it was a nightmare, and it continues to be so, Tucker.
So, there's so many threads here, but I just want to finish out the story, and it's so frustrating to hear this. But the story of what happened that day. So you finish this interview, and then you're carted off to where?
Well, they took me to a place called the Central Virginia Regional Jail, which is in lovely Orange, Virginia. It's about 2 hours south of us. And I was processed in the usual process, strip you down, cavity search, that sort of thing, body scan. Give you a threadbare jumpsuit. They threw me into a crowded cell. I had one blanket, made in China, and I was forced to sleep on the floor. And I thought, well, gosh, they're going to bond me out of here, Bail Reform Act and all that stuff. And then we got into the thing that I mentioned before, where somebody actually fibbed to the judge and said that, I was a fugitive. And then I go back to the cell and I'm going, holy mackerel. If they're willing to do that, I might not ever get out of here.
So you didn't get bonded out. So how long did you spend in jail?
Well, it was 53 days altogether, 49 in solitary confinement. I think their solitary confinement cells were too crowded, so that's why they didn't put me in there initially. But that's a long, long time, especially in solitary confinement. And I'll tell you what, I could tell you a lot about that if you're interested. It was really, really bad.
Well, tell us something about it. I mean, I don't think most of our viewers have been in solitary confinement on false charges in their own country, so it's an unusual experience.
I certainly hope that nobody ever has to go through that. But I tell people that I went to hell. It was hell. Now, if you ask somebody, Tucker, what is hell? And people will say, well, there's fire and there's this and there's that. Okay, I get that. Here's what hell really is, okay? Hell is isolation. Now, there was no river of fire for me, okay? But I was isolated and ice cold air blowing on me 24 hours a day. I couldn't stop shivering from the whole time I was in there. And part of the thing about being in solitary confinement is it's supposed to be punishment. Well, what the heck had I done? I hadn't even been to trial for anything, but I was put in what amounts to a supermax with the most hardened criminals that they had in that particular facility. But there was really, it was kind of a situation where you were off kilter. You didn't know if it was day or night. You didn't know what time it was. Now, this prison that I was put in, this is not a happy little prison like on Andy of Mayberry where Otis the drunk would come in, let himself into the cell, sleep it off, Aunt Bee brings him breakfast in the morning and he goes home. No, this was a concrete box. It was a coffin. I was in a concrete coffin with a huge steel door and I was absolutely alone. What hell is isolation and it's hopelessness. And sometimes it's deathly quiet in hell, but sometimes it's very, very loud. There is life, in a manner of speaking, going on around you, but you don't have any interface with people. And people are herd animals. And so one of the things that you want to do is you want to be around people. One of the problems with this COVID lockdown is people get tremendous anxiety when they're separated from their family and everything that they know. And we know that people commit suicide and this, that, and the other thing. And this is terrible. This is terrible stuff. And don't think for a minute that people who are locked up in that hell don't think about those things. And I shared with Sharon the other day, one of the other things about this hell that I was in is you think about the anguish of the other people that are in the same situation that you are in. And in the middle of the night or the middle of the day, you could hear screams echoing down the passageway of people that were either hurt or they were in anguish or something. And it was actually absolutely, absolutely horrible.
I hope the monsters who did this to you are punished to the full extent that they can be punished. I haven't even asked you this question because I think our viewers already know the answer, but I'm going to formally ask it now. Were you inside the Capitol on January 6th? Did you break the law to your knowledge? Did you assault anyone? Did you commit acts of vandalism? No.
No, sir. Nope, did not.
No, and I would just like to say, I've said some of this before, but Tom and I, decided on our own to go to January 6th. As husband and wife, we considered a fun little outing, a getaway to D.C. for a couple of days. We were going to go see the President Trump speak, at a rally. We'd never been to one of his rallies before. We thought, okay, if we don't do this one, we probably won't get to one. So we went there primarily for that. We thought, well, he has severe physical issues, health issues. we thought if we have the physical oomph and we're feeling okay, perhaps we will then go ahead and walk to the Capitol and do our little peaceful protest, which is what we did. We listened to the president speak. We slowly walked to the Capitol. We hung out there for a while on the west side. We never went inside to the Capitol, or never went inside the Capitol. And we hobbled back to our car. And, I almost had to carry him back to the car at the end of the day, right?
That's true.
You have a back problem, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Multiple operations, and my spine is basically held together with screws and spacers and things like that. It's just stuff that comes with, being in the military for a long time, living a very active life. And, it's very, very, very rough. And, I'm actually on a lot of prescription medications just to kind of keep me going. I have good days and bad days. I'm so glad that I'm able to speak to you on a day where I'm lucid and not curled up in a ball, just talking about how bad I hurt.
He sometimes has to use a cane. He sometimes has to use a walker. Now, not every day. Not every day. He has his good days and bad days. But he has trouble walking sometimes. He's in a lot of pain. But we just wanted to participate in this. And, we had no idea. We had no idea riots of that nature were going to break out. We didn't know. But we went there and got caught up in this thing.
But you didn't get caught up in any of the illegal activities on that day, it doesn't sound like. So it's a little baffling why you were swept up in this paramilitary raid and thrown, especially in your physical condition, into solitary confinement for months. I mean, what is the answer? Do you know?
Well, we don't know, and we talked at the top of the program about all of the claims and all of the charges that were later abandoned, which really got people riled up, and yet none of those things are true, and I really don't understand. There's a lot of information that they snatched up here at our home that we haven't gotten back through discovery, which is exculpatory. These are shots of us, doing selfies and sitting at a place called the Peace Monument. For people that don't know Washington, D.C., before you get right up to the Capitol on the west side where the inauguration happens, we've all seen pictures of Abraham Lincoln and so on. They have a place called the Peace Monument, also sometimes called the Navy Monument. It was a dry fountain. And I'll tell you what, after I stumped my way down Constitution Avenue, I couldn't wait to took us down on the side of that thing and just put my head in my hands and just relax. And we spent a lot of time just sitting there. But we didn't do anything illegal. We didn't hurt anybody. We didn't break anything. We didn't go through a barrier. We didn't assault police. I don't know what's going on. So when they came on the 19th with this SWAT team, it was all the more baffling. It's like, what's going on here? Sharon had made a comment before to a friend, with Tom's condition, they could have sent a Girl Scout with a box of Thin Mints and Tom would have come out and talked to her. I just don't know why they had to do this overkill.
Well, because they're monsters, that's why. So let me ask you, so your descriptions here really evoke a video that I saw recently of a member of the Oath Keepers, whose name I believe is Ray Epps. And this is someone who is on video repeatedly urging the crowd of Trump supporters the night before on January 5th in Washington to break the law by entering the Capitol. I want to show you one piece of video right now of that happening because I think it's really interesting. Here it is.
We need to go in to the Capitol. Let's go! So I'm going to put it out there. I'm probably going to go to jail for it, okay? Tomorrow, we need to go into the Capitol. Into the Capitol. What? Peacefully. Okay, folks, spread the word. As soon as the president's done speaking, we go to the Capitol. The Capitol's this direction.
So that's a pretty amazing series of tapes. Here you have a guy who I think it is established was an actual member, unlike you, of the Oath Keepers, unlike you, encouraging others to break the law on videotape repeatedly, and yet, unlike you, has not been indicted and not gone to jail and not spent 53 days in solitary confinement. Why do you think that is?
Well, I don't know, Tucker, but like most of America, we became aware of that clip and of that personage through your program. And it is really an eye-opener.
So do you know that man? Have you ever met that man?
Oh, no,
never,
sir.
Never.
And in fact, I was amazed when you said it's been confirmed that this guy was an Oath Keeper. I believe that the Oath Keepers are a nationwide organization, patriotic organization. I don't know how many hundreds of members because, I'm not part of it. But they seem to be African-American, white, Hispanic, just kind of a group of patriotic folks, for want of a better term. There's been a lot of things floating around, and I can't really go there. It's very curious. A lot of people are talking about, and of course, Merrick Garland, and again, we saw this on your program, won't talk to Congress about how many FBI people may or may not have been there on January 6th. And whether this guy was working for them, we don't know, and we may never know, but it certainly is very, very curious. And it's just another one of those things that an old song a few decades ago says, things that make you go, So it makes you wonder what's going on.
Well, it certainly does. And it's interesting that the crowd the night before January 6th immediately believed that this guy was working for the FBI, or the DOJ in some sense. They called him a Fed. There's another man called Stuart Rhodes, who was a leader, or maybe the leader of the Oath Keepers, who also has not been indicted. Again, we can't say why, but it's worth asking. Have you met him?
I certainly have met him. In fact, he was the first of any of the Oath Keepers that I met. I believe he is the founder. He's really the leader of the Oath Keepers. Seems to be a very, very nice guy. I think he had a little time in the military. He is a trained lawyer. I believe that, he still practices law. I'm not sure exactly where. Seems to be a really nice guy.
Does it seem strange to you, though? And I've never met him. I don't know very much about him. But I do know, as you just said, that he is one of the leaders, maybe the founder of the Oath Keepers. Unlike you, you were never a member. You were indicted. You were imprisoned in solitary because of your supposed connection to the Oath Keepers. But here you have the leader of the Oath Keepers not indicted. What is that exactly? Any guess?
I don't know. There are a lot of guesses out there, and I've read many articles, whether it's Revolver or whatever, and I really don't have a clue about that. When I was in solitary, I kept thinking to myself, why doesn't this guy just come out and tell them that I'm not the leader? Well, unbeknownst to me, he had done that already. I mean, I was locked down. I wasn't given newspapers or access to TV, but he stood right up and said, "No, this guy's not the leader." So I really don't know why he's been indicted. Some people might say, well, he's got something to hide or he's working with the government. I don't believe any of that stuff. I think that he is innocent, and I don't know. Tucker, they could just be making him stew a little bit. I'm not sure.
Interesting. How did you get out of jail?
Well, while I was in there, pretty much thinking I'd never get out, Sharon found a gentleman named David Fisher, who's an excellent attorney out of Glen Burnie, Maryland. And David started doing, what I said on your show earlier, he started doing lawyer stuff. And he did his investigation and saw that there was no merit to the charges as they were written, these claims against me. And basically, he went to the government and said, show me your evidence. And they couldn't produce any evidence to support the claims that they had. And the judge in our case, who our attorney says is a really smart guy, maybe the smartest judge he's ever been around, said to the prosecutors, hey, look, there's a lot of stuff here that kind of makes Mr. Caldwell look good. I'm going to let him go home. And we're so grateful. Sharon has said it. She thought I was going to die in there. And I did too, quite frankly. It was only our faith in God that got us through that. And so the judge said, hey, go home, but you're going to be on home confinement. I've got my little tracking device on here. I can leave the property to go to my attorneys and go to church Two things I'm very, very grateful for. If this is what the judge thinks is necessary, okay. We're hoping that maybe he'll loosen some of these restrictions, but that remains to be seen.
So what are you, and by the way, I think you've just illustrated why it's really important to marry the right person, because if you ever get sent to jail, she can help get you out.
Well, Tucker, let me.
But actually, if I could comment on that a little bit, so when Tom was in prison, and this, again, he was whisked away from me, and I was, trying to. Most of the time, I could talk to him like once a day. Once a day on the phone for like 10 minutes, sometimes twice a day, and that was sort of our lifeline. But so I was always trying to pump him up a little bit as much as I could. We would pray together on that phone call. I lived for that phone call. But so he had all this going on in prison. It was so hard to talk to him. I could just tell from talking with him that he was suffering so much. It was awful. I lived for those phone calls, and yet I dreaded them because he sounded so terrible, and I didn't know how to help him. I felt really helpless. So I had all that going on, constantly worried about him all the time. I really honestly thought he'd die in there. So I'm so grateful that the judge finally decided to release him. But so he's in there, and I'm going through all this other stuff. I'm like, okay, I got to find an attorney. Where do you even start? Where do you even start to find an attorney for something like this? Excuse me. And the FBI had taken, my computer, how do I pay my bills? I do them online. I don't have a computer anymore. So they did leave me with my cell phone. I gave them permission when they were here to take a digital image of it or whatever they call it while they were here. So they did leave me with that. But, my computer was gone, and I'm thinking, okay, so I have to go buy another computer. I'm dealing with, trying to manage our finances and our money, and I don't know what's going on. And it was just, there are a lot of things I'm dealing with while he's in prison, and it was a very, very dark time for both of us, but yeah. So by the grace of God, I believe I finally found the attorney that we have now, David Fisher, and what you do is you just literally talk to everybody tell them what you're trying to do, and somebody who might know somebody, and thank goodness his cousin actually recommended through somebody she knew. David, and now he's our wonderful attorney. But I did want to mention, I don't know if this is the appropriate time or not, I did want to mention, while he was in prison, I was going through a lot as well. And but I have to say that, at least for me, I was fortunate enough to have wonderful, wonderful friends and neighbors that were really checking on me all the time. They'd come over to the house, they'd bring me food, they'd say, is there anything I can help you with? Is there anything I can help you with? They would drag me out of the house over to their homes for dinner, or pray with me, out to dinner, just to get me out of the house and help me with my mental state, just to kind of keep me up and get me away maybe just for a little bit of time from this situation. And I would just like to share with you one incident, if I may, and that was, so I'm home. I have no idea when or if he's ever going to get out of jail. January comes and goes. February comes and goes. He's already had one detention request or reconsideration of detention request denied. So we're going to go for another one, see if we can get him out. And it becomes March, and a neighbor of mine comes to the house. He comes in, we're visiting. He says to me, I see your Christmas tree is still up. Would you like me to help you take down the Christmas tree? And I'd be glad to help you with that. And I just said, no. Tom and I always put the Christmas tree up together, and Tom and I always take down the Christmas tree together. So when Tom comes home, we will take it down. And he looked at me and he said, okay, because he knew it wasn't coming down. And thank goodness, about 2 weeks later, on March 12th, the judge made the wonderful decision, which probably saved his life, to release Tom, and he came home. And I think we finally took the tree down sometime in April. But it's a good thing he came home, because otherwise I would still have it up. It wouldn't come down until he came home.
That is just sad as hell.
So,
let me just ask, though, I should have asked you a half an hour ago, what do you remain charged with exactly?
Let me answer that.
Sure,
yeah.
you can answer.
So he has, and I'll answer this to the best of my ability, because some of this is legal jargon, but basically he has 2 counts that I almost think of them as one count, but it's conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding. So it's kind of two counts, the conspiracy and the obstructing official proceeding, but they sort of go together. And then he has, it's kind of a trespassing charge as a kind of a third one. And then he has a charge related to, I guess, tampering with documents or evidence. They claim he unsent some Facebook messages or something like that. So those are the things he has remaining.
What are the potential penalties for those charges? Do you know? What are you facing?
Well, you know, I think the conspiracy charge alone, it carries 20 years. They're basically trying to put me in jail for the rest of my life
for something
I never did.
Do.
And
are you worried?
Worse,
I mean,
Tucker?
you're laughing now, but I mean, they could take your life away for real. Are you worried about it?
Absolutely. Well, absolutely. And you know, if we weren't laughing, we'd be crying.
Right.
You know, we're people of great faith. We're Christians. We believe that God is watching all this. We know that I'm innocent, and we've got information that is exculpatory. I don't know why they're continuing to press this thing home, but you know, sometimes folks that are in authoritative positions find it hard to accept responsibility and say, "Hey, look, I messed up." You know. In the Navy, I saw that among the senior officer corps. I think all of America has seen that in our government and in our military, especially recently. That's just my point of view. But they just keep pressing it home, and I'm not the first one that they've pressed bad charges or phony charges on, but they've traumatized my lovely wife Sharon and me, quite frankly, and they've driven us to the edge of bankruptcy. All we have now is this little farm, the farm that I grew up on, you know, tilling fields with my folks, God rest them, and my sister, my widowed sister, who lives about 300 yards away, and this is all we have left. I don't think that they should have the right to destroy our lives and take everything from us, including this precious little place. I mean, you know, it's nothing special, but it's a lot to us. And they shouldn't be allowed to do that, but that's where we're going. And if they've got an agenda, it would be nice if they would find Jesus Christ, because maybe they wouldn't do this.
Yeah, I agree with that. So at some point, I would love to know who exactly you believe, because I just want to be clear, these people should be punished for this. This is a moral atrocity. And I would love to know, who do you think is pushing this specifically? Do you have any idea?
I don't know. I mean, I have no idea. I really don't. But I'm not sure. Who knows? I don't even want to venture a guess. But this is what I think. I think that, you know, because of this rush, mistakes were made. And I just truly believe, I have faith in the American people. I'm trying very, very hard to have faith in the rule of law and our justice system. It's a little bit hard right now, but I'm trying to do that. And I just believe that, you know, I know he's innocent. He knows he's innocent. God knows he's innocent. I know that at the end of the day, I just truly believe that this is all going to be fine. I absolutely do. This is temporary. We have to go through this difficulty right now, but I do believe that over time, the truth will come to light and we're going to be fine. Now, sometimes it's hard. It's hard when you're in the midst of this to think that, but I just really do. And actually two things I'd like to say. One is that I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it. So and people are like, how are you getting through this? How do you maintain your sense of humor? Well, like Tom said, if we weren't laughing, we'd be crying. And believe me, we've done a lot of crying. We've had a lot of sleepless nights. I don't want to say we're done with that, but we're moving forward. We're placing our faith in God. And we were the other day watching a Joel Osteen sermon on TV. And again, I don't know if I should mention that. I don't know if he'd want me to mention his name here, but I did. So, and he was talking about how a lot of people go through difficult times in their life for various reasons. They go through difficulties. And sometimes you think, oh my gosh, this is so bad. This is so bad. I'm never going to get out of it. There's no end in sight. But there are good things that come out of it, and even good things. And we've, even in the midst of this nightmare that we're going through, we've had miracles occur. We have blessings. We have blessings every day that occur. This has increased our faith in God. This is, I bring up Joel Osteen because we're listening to him and how good can come out of these things. And he had a catchphrase. It was a catchphrase, but I took it to heart because he said, for us, people ask you, how are you getting through this? How are, he said, you're not going through it. You're growing through it. And that just hit me because that's what's exactly what's happening to us. We're not going through this. We are growing through it. We are growing in our faith in God. We're growing in our relationship with God. We're growing, and we honestly, what we're going through really, really, really sucks. But we laugh every day. We have hope. We have hope. I just believe that the truth will come out and it's going to be fine.
Well, that's a really heartening thing to hear you say, I have to say. I mean, that you are.
Yeah, I believe that.
So let me just ask you a final question.
And I'll tell you what.
Yes?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, our spiritual muscles are really getting stronger and stronger every single day.
Well, so. that is quite an upside. Thompson, I just can't get past the idea that you spent 53 days in solitary, 49 out of 53 in solitary confinement. That gives you a lot of time to suffer, but also some time to think. What conclusions, as someone who's literally served the federal government as a career, as a naval officer and then an FBI employee, amazingly, what have you concluded from this? Like, what have you learned?
Well, at the time when I was wallowing in it and was kind of swirling down, dealing with all the anxiety and all that, first of all, I had seen quite clearly, we talk about a rush to judgment, that there is no emphasis on truth and innocence. Okay, so this seemed like Sharon said, some people just decided this is a good thing that had to happen, and I was very low. I was very low, and I will tell you this. And sometimes people get uncomfortable when you speak about these things, but I've already told you that I'm a person of faith, and I know that you've got a Christian background too, Tucker. So if you'll permit me, at my lowest time in there, and bear in mind, the libraries are closed. You can't exercise. You can't do any of that stuff. I convinced a correctional officer to hand me an old Bible that I actually saw in a cart outside of my dungeon one day. And I brought that. He handed that to me through the little aperture in the door, and I sat down there on that freezing concrete floor, and I thought, everybody's against me. How are we going to get out of this? Only Sharon believes in me. And this is true. I opened up, where do you start in the Bible, right? I opened it up, and it came to Psalm 109. The mouths of the wicked and the mouths of the deceitful are opened against me. They speak of me with a lying tongue. And I knew right then that I was not alone in that prison cell, that God was with me, and that all I had to do was hold on. Hold on, I'm coming. And he raised me as if he raised me from the dead, because I was very close. And I'll leave you with this too. You have to have something to think about, something to focus on, besides God, besides Jesus. Those are your strength. But in that dungeon, I scratched into each wall and each door Sharon's name, along with a cross. So every day I would see that, and I would know why I had to keep faith. I told God the Father, I said, I just want to see Sharon one more time. If I'm going to die, this is it. And then, miracle upon miracle, I got out. And I think about it now. I didn't have much time to think about it then, but I think about it now, and I think about the poor soul that followed me into that cell, looking around and saying, I want to know who Sharon is.
That's a wonderful story, and I kept having to remind myself. I've interviewed a lot of guys with the Hanoi Hilton, and it's hard to believe this was America. But you persevered. Your mate turns out to be your fate, proving that is true. And we're going to be following your case Tucker, on this show. Yes, sir.
Will you permit me one last thing before you go? One last thing, and that is my advice to every young man listening to this: if you want to be happy for the rest of your life, make a Sunday school teacher your wife.
Because I used to be one many years ago. Many years ago. And this is cheesy, I know, I'm sorry, but I do have to do this.
Right.
I don't like to do this. This way? Oh,
Yep.
yeah. So we...
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
this way?
Mm-hmm.
Keep going that way.
This
There we
way? Okay.
There we go.
All right. So I feel silly doing this, but if people want to know more about, our situation, our story, there is some great information on our website. If you are interested in perhaps helping us with our legal expenses, you can go here too. So I'm sorry for the little commercial, but it's Save Our Farm VA. People like to forget the VA, but it's SaveOurFarmVA.com. Thank you.
So it's not Save Your Farm VA. Save Our Farm VA. Perfect.
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
Yeah.
And Tucker, since the exposure that you so graciously gave us on your program in the evenings, we have received just a wealth of cards and letters and support. And yes, donations to our legal fund. And we're very grateful to the American people. And we get cards and heartfelt prayers and notes and donations from virtually every state in the union, and little towns like Bluffton, South Carolina, and Fairmont, West Virginia, Simi Valley, California, everywhere. And people are saying, hang in there. God is with you. The truth's going to come out. Don't give up. And God bless you and Sharon. And we have some beautiful people in this country, and I am humbled every day to tears when we receive things like that, Tucker. It's an amazing thing, and we're going to persevere. What choice do we have? I'm not going to prison, hopefully, for the rest of my life for something I didn't do, and I can prove it.
I'm not surprised. This is a wonderful country run at the moment by bad people, but I hope you persevere and prevail, and the rest of us do too. The Caldwells, thank you both very much. It was great to talk to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tucker.
Thank you. Sharon and Tom Caldwell. We're out of time. The show is Tucker Carlson Today. New episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on Fox Nation. We're coming to you every weeknight, 8 p.m. on the Fox News Channel. We'll see you there.